What's going on, my people? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Poetry, Politics, and Life, where we bear it all. I am your host, Tony Briscoe. Let's go ahead and get this party started.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode 19, actually. Glad to even be at that milestone with the busyness of my life, with education and working and photography and everything else that I have going on. Thank you all for tuning in. I wanted to do a Mother's Day tribute that may be triggering for some. So I want to at least warn you of the conversation I'm about to get into. Before I do that, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I know your work is not easy, and it is appreciated. I've met a young man in the clubhouse streets by the name of Tariq, and when I hear Brother Tariq speak of his mom, he is such a dynamic storyteller. His passion with poetry, spoken word, really exudes from him. So I love hearing him on Clubhouse on a weekly basis. I just met this brother 3 weeks ago, but when he shares the ancestry of his mom, he has a way of channeling the inner core of our heritage as Black people, as people who are descended from Africans. So shout out to you, Brother Tariq. Love you, brother. And I mean that. This may be triggering for some, but before I get into my conversation, I'd like to share something with you all. It's a song on my album that was released in 2018, titled My Journey After My Daughter. It's a song called Deliverer. I just want to do the first piece of that song and then go into my conversation today on my three moms. I hug you because it is the right thing to do. I say I love you because it is the right thing to say. But in my heart, hey, mama, you are so far away. Sometimes I wish that you never came back to me. You left me and my brother so you could snort coke. You called, said you come back to build up our hope. It took years before we realized that was a joke. Two young brothers lost in the world, so hard to cope. And you took my Aunt Belinda with her caramel skin. You got her doped up and addicted to heroin. That was the same drug that did her in. You were jealous of her looks and she died so thin. You can't imagine at her funeral what I went through because I'm staring at her casket wishing that it was you. Cause mom, you never gave us a chance to fight. You turned us over to the state, mom, and that wasn't right. Don't you know I wake up in cold sweats at night because some man ran up in me like I was his wife. So many times looked at my wrist and grabbed the knife. My voice is screaming in my head, boy, end your life. I want to talk about moms based on my experience. 3 different ways. My biological mother, who gave me life. My foster mother, who gave me a chance to live. And my last foster mother, who taught me how to love. My biological mother is still alive. We have not spoken in close to 2 years now. The last time I went to visit her was in the hospital. I found out she was still doing drugs. And I have this memory of my mom ODing. We lived on 43rd and Greenwood. At this time, houses were rented out by room, so you could have a community of people living in one big house. And I remember not being able to wake her up. I remember a syringe being tied to her arm. I remember a needle in her arm. I remember putting a blanket over her and crying and screaming, and nobody ever came for help. She woke up the next day The stench in the room was bad because we used to have to use the bathroom in a bucket that was in the living room. And being there, locked in, unable to get out, unable to get help. It's a period of life that my brother and I really don't talk about until this day because he was gone. And I'm not going to get into that because of his privacy and respecting his privacy. I don't want to focus on the negative. My mom has battled with drugs her entire life, her entire existence. But she could have had an abortion. And she did not. And for that, I am grateful. She gave me life. I will always respect that. I am unapologetic about being a Christian. And part of my Christian walk, I am commanded, I am told to honor my mother and my father. For it is the first commandment with promise that my days may be numbered or increased. The challenge with that is the pain that you have to work through when you have this cantankerous relationship with your mom. But I've never disrespected her, ever. Because my faith doesn't give me the luxury to respect my parents based on how they treated me. It just said respect them. And there's no condition to that. I'll talk about dad on Father's Day. My mom gave me a chance at life by birthing me. A few years ago, she said, I don't expect you to understand. I gave you and your brother up so you could have a chance to live. So I can't argue with that statement. I'm older now. So as a younger person or younger human being, you don't want to hear that crap. But as you get older, you begin to reflect over your life and what kind of life I may have had I still been in her custody. I don't know. But I acknowledge the fact that at a time where women were getting abortions in back doors, their wombs being torn to shreds by illegal activities due to them having to get abortions. I'm grateful that my mother chose to bring me into this world. For whatever reason, when she was pregnant at 16 and pregnant at 18, she stopped drinking and she stopped doing drugs. When she found out that she was carrying seeds inside of her, my brother and I. Listening to my wife over the years and learning some of the things about my mother that she never shared with me, but my biological father shared with me. There are things that happened to my mother in her life that were horrendous. And my wife told me some years ago, she said, your mom never knew how to parent because she was broken. Out of privacy, I will not reveal her trauma in a recording. But my mom went through some very hellacious things, and use your imagination. When you think about horrendous things that can happen to a woman, they all happen to my mother, biological. She had this boyfriend who will remain nameless. Even when I see an image of him in my head, I get fearful to this day. He was a giant of a man, and he was brutal. Particularly one night, he beat my mother so bad she could not even put sunglasses on. Her eyes were so swollen. And, we got into this discussion recently in our barbershop that Brother Tariq invited me into. When you talk about protecting black women and where black men are, the amount of men who were living in this house that we stayed in one room, nobody came to my mother's rescue. He pulverized her. He beat her in the face with a cowboy boot. And some hours later, I get to play like I'm asleep, but watching them engage in sexual activity right there in the one room that we lived in. It was all the trauma you can imagine that comes with that. My mom and I haven't spoken in a very long time. And I did send a text a couple of months ago to check on her during this COVID season. It was the first time she had even returned the text, and she just said, "I'm fine." And I left it at that. When she kicked me out of her hospital almost 2.5 years ago, I just said, "When you need me, I'll be there." And I left it at that. Because I'm at a place in my life where I don't have to wear her stuff. There was a time I did so much, and my wife and I did so much. Money, bills, clothes, food, like you name it, we did it. And I was doing those because I just wanted her love. And I can't say she didn't give me love. I just said she did it the best way she knew how. And there was a lot of manipulation involved in that. But because she simply gave me life, brought me into this world, biological mother, I thank you. My first foster mom, or foster guardian, whatever you want to call it, was my cousin. And my cousin, man, she was rough. She was no nonsense. Like, she'd knock a brother out 2.5 seconds. If her grandkids happen to tune into this, and God rest her soul, she died in 2009 October. I miss her. She gave me a chance at life. For the 8 years that I was under her care, she did what she could. Again, when you're a child, you just feel like you are not considered. But she took my brother and I in. She already had 2 kids of her own. She had a husband, God rest his soul as well, very loving man. And he had his own set of issues, and out of respect, I won't get into those issues. But there was a time she was left single with all 4 of us, my brother and I, and her son and her daughter. And again, I'm older now. So when I was a child, I spake as a child about her. I'm not a child anymore. And so I speak in a different light, in a different context, because I'm older and I have to share and make a distinction between that experience. I thought that was favoritism. And there was. But for 8 years, I did get to experience things I never experienced in my first 9 years of life. Consistent shelter, consistent food, consistent help with homework, a consistent structure of family, a consistent structure of spiritual understanding and growth. Now, we didn't crack the Bible once, but we were in church every Sunday. I'm not sure how many times we had prayer as a family. I don't think it existed. And I could be wrong because, again, it's childhood, right? So some things you just don't remember, right? I do remember consistent Christmases, whether it was one gift under that tree or whether it was 15 gifts under that tree, right? There was a structure that I was not familiar with. And having my cousin, who's both was like my brother and my sister, honestly, and my brother there was just a lot of weight still within the household. Now, I'm not looking, I don't bash the church. I make considerations about the church, but my brother and I grew up in 3 different households: Catholic, Muslim, and Christian. And none of these households literally live the daily, I would say, rituals or the religious aspect of what you would expect, right? It was more like religion by title as opposed to faith by life. But my cousin, Arlene, was probably one of the strongest women that I know. The reason I love God's daughters is because I've seen firsthand what happens to women when they are left alone to carry the financial burden of feeding, clothing, and housing children. Yes, my cousin Arlene was tough, but she was big on education. I mean, big, man. She ain't played with them grades, y'all. Arlene wasn't playing. She is the foster mother that gave me an opportunity to live. Biological mother gave me life. Foster mother number 2 gave me an opportunity to live. The last 7 years of our relationship, for the first time, was like mother and son. There was a time I was in the dance ministry at our church, and you got to deal with the brothers. Oh, our brother's dancing. You going to put on a tutu? No, I ain't wearing no tutu, dog. I pumped the black fist when the women waved a hand, okay? I know, toxic masculinity. It's all in there. I got it. And my cousin Arlene was known for jokes. Like, she could roast like the best of them. Like, you ain't want no smoke where you challenge her to a roast, you going down. And I remember that I was like, man, I got to see her after service. I know she got some jokes. And she looked at me after that service where I ministered and danced. And she said, Tony, you look really good. I am so proud of you. And I didn't even have words. I was like, wow, like no jokes from cuz. It was a pivotal moment in our relationship. And the last 7 years of her life, I'm so grateful for what we discussed, how we hurt each other, how we wish we could have done better early on. And she had a lot of regrets about how she raised us. And I remember telling her when she was at a care facility, and I said, cuz you did the best you could with what you had. You own your stuff, and we as your children have to own our stuff. It's not your weight to bear alone. The love we shared was so incredible. And it was so amazing. And you always wonder that if our families were not so broken, the potential of what we had to become, if the weights of oppression, if the weights of generational curses, if the weights of competition, if the weight of systemic racism wasn't there, all the stuff that comes with life, man. Excuse me. I love you, cuz. And because of the faith that we share, I know I'll be with you again. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to live. My final thoughts of love are from Mother Wells. Remember, biological mother gave me an opportunity at life by giving birth. Foster mom, Arlene, gave me an opportunity to live by taking me in. When I left Arlene's custody, I was 16 years old. I had run away after my junior year was complete. Not going to get into the details of why. It's not important. I was homeless for a bit. Did a week in an arty home. Went to camp. Got diagnosed with tuberculosis. Got sent home from camp. I was put back on a train, to Chicago. I lied to the camp people. I told them I had somewhere to go. I didn't. And I got off the train at Union Station, wandering in loss, wanting to die. Eventually, I went to stay with another cousin for a little while, only for a few months, maybe 5 months, before I ran away from there. And me and this cousin have straight love for each other. So I found my biological father, went to stay with him for a little bit. And he was dealing drugs out of Stateway Gardens. I would take drugs to the door for him and take money in exchange. That's something I've never shared before in my life. My last foster mom, and I call her mom to this day, is Lee Wells. And I'm saying her name without permission because I'm just going to do that. Because if there's a woman the world needs to know and meet, it is Lee Verna Wells. She said to me, "Come stay here." Now, we live right across the street from Lee on the same block. All of our, her kids, my kids went to the same school, grammar school and high school, came out together. She said, "The projects that you were born in are not the projects of today, and you're not going to make it down there." So I moved in to Lee Verna Wells' household. Now, you talking about a crowded crib? Again, she already had 2 kids of her own. She took in my brother, who was an adult at the time, and she had me. She had her son. She had her daughter. She had her brother. She had her niece. She had her sister. We all living in this crib. Okay? I'm not going to say I never got love previously before her. But when I deal with them in the aspects of what I took away, biological mother gave me life. Cousin Arlene gave me an opportunity to live. But Lee Verna Wells, and I shouldn't say but, I should say and Lee Verna Wells, I have never known love like this woman. She is the epitome of endurance. She is the epitome of strength. And she is the epitome of being a living example of God's love. She said to me once, and I may have shared this on a previous podcast, so if I'm repeating myself, I'm not going to ask for forgiveness. It's my podcast, right? Just joking, y'all. Just joking. She said, Tony, it feels like you came out of my womb. Now, you talking about a dude breaking down in tears, not tears, tears, for a woman who did not give me birth. Say to me that it feels like you came out of my womb. Shook me to the very foundation of my existence. I don't think I will ever hear greater words than that in this earthly realm. The ultimate words I want to hear is from my Lord and Savior when he says, well done, thy good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I will now make you ruler over many. But those words from her, man, I love you, Lee. With all of my heart, my soul, and my being. My brother Rod, her son, said, man, Loco. That's what they called me back then, Loco. He still called me Loco. He said, man, I think she loves you more than she loved me. And we laugh and we joke about it. Because I know she doesn't. That would be hard. But the difference in that is the fact that he said it means she never let there be a difference in how she made the young people under her care feel. At one point, I think there was 8 of us living in that apartment on Phillips in the South Shore area. Thank you, Mother Wells, for showing me true love. Whatever's going on in your world, family, I don't know. Maybe your situation with your parents before they passed on went unresolved, and there's not much you can do about that at this point. Except pick up a pen and write and share it up into the heavenlies. For those of you who find yourselves like me in current situations with parents, I don't have the words because if I could fix it, I would fix mine. I can't fix your stuff. I'll just say this. You love people where they are. The best way you know how. There's not much more you can do. If you believe in the power of prayer and that prayer changes things, then you just keep praying because that's all I can do at this point. I tried over the last few years to call. I tried to call again last year when my nephew was murdered, and the words that were shared to me then by the significant other in her life were probably the most unhuman comments one would ever want to hear. So if there's a way for you to mend your relationship with your parents, by all means, go for it and do it. But know your own boundaries. And respect your own mental space. And know what you can endure. For the moms out there, happy Mother's Day to you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you're doing. And thank you for all that you have done. Enjoy. God bless.